Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Healing Arts Podcast. Today, I had the great pleasure and honor to speak with Nicole Wild. She's a yoga teacher and a yoga teacher. She teaches teachers how to teach. And so it was a super fun conversation. We talked about the world of yoga in general and all of the different schools or techniques or avenues, different sort of styles that in the way yoga is practiced and in the way yoga is taught. So if you have any curiosity about, the variations in there, maybe you can get somewhat of a sense of what that's like from this conversation. Also what the education is like and what kind of things are taught in the base curriculum, as well as what's taught in her specific one. All of that, and I thought it was just a really great conversation. Also, she's in a unique place because she leads a lot of retreats. Leading retreats is a big part of her teaching practice, and so it was just kind of fun to talk about that and who they're for, what they're like, and and this kind of thing. So yeah, it was just super fun, and I hope you enjoy it as I did. So come along for the ride. Thank you very much. Coming to talk to me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So fun to be in this little space.
Yeah.
And get to chat with you.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Okay, so maybe the first question that I'd like to ask is about the process of how you got to where you got.
Oh,
I actually have no idea how you got to where you got, so this is a genuine question, but also I think it's a good way to start, to get some background of... Yeah. So how'd you get into the yoga space?
Okay. This is where in my head I'm like, do I give the long?
Give me the long one.
Short?
Give me the long version.
Ooh, okay. Well, if I go way back, if I'm gonna give you from day one.
Please.
I was a kid that experienced so many big emotions and so many I experienced a lot as a kid. I had a house break-in that caused me some emotional trauma and not that I need to get into the details of that. I'm happy to, but anyways, and I ended up just having a lot of emotional things that I needed to work through in very young years, like middle school, high school. My parents ended up putting me in therapy in high school because it was clear that I just was mentally needed more support than they knew how to give me. And I'm wildly grateful for that. I think I would not be the person I am today if it weren't for my parents being it's time, you have to talk to someone, because I was experiencing a lot of OCD symptoms and anxiety, depression, and also just, even aside from that, I think I've always been a really deep feeler and very philosophical, very I want to know why humans experience the things that we do, probably asking really big questions from a very young age that my parents were how do we support this? So I ended up in therapy in middle school. I think I said high school, but it was middle school that I ended up starting therapy. And I was so receptive to it. I just embraced so much the conversations of how to become mentally well, and not even just well and healthy in a everything's okay type of way, but I want to be more than okay. I want to be good. I want to be great. I want to love my life. And I felt that want for the lust of living from a rarely young age. Does that make sense to say? An age that is younger than most people start to maybe think those things, or maybe just say them. I don't know.
Yes.
And then that really spun me into this whole okay, I'm doing all this mental work and emotional work, and what about my physical body? I did not grow up in a family that had much attention to nutrition or exercise or any of those things, and I mean, of course, I love my family, they're wonderful people, but I really knew nothing about taking care of myself on a physical level, and kind of through doing all this mental emotional work, I became more interested in taking care of my body also, and did a lot of my own, by the time I was out of high school and still living with my parents, through high school, I was like cooking all of my own meals and doing my own grocery shopping, and was just like really interested in like, how do I take care of this like body-mind unit? And I really saw the connection between body and mind in a way that felt very tangible to me, but no one else in my household was on my wavelength. So I was like, you all do your thing, I'm gonna do my thing, and I'm gonna like keep exploring this space. Started to get really into different forms of exercise, and I made a list of things that I wanted to try because it all felt foreign to me, that were all in the realm of like taking care of myself. So running, kickboxing, Pilates, Pure Barre, nutrition was a piece of that. And
did
then
that
yoga.
come from the therapy sessions, that kind of idea, or did that come just from you?
I think from me, but I'm sure, like I don't remember having a specific therapy session talking about that, but maybe it got brought up. It's very possible that it all weaves together for sure. But yoga was on that list, and I was 17, and I remember getting through this list and like getting to the point where yoga was, I was like, all right, it's time, I gotta go to a yoga class, and I did not want to go. I was like, why did I even put this on the list? That's lame. And I know, right? And I went to my first class, and I was like, yeah, it was okay. Like it was good, but I wasn't like immediately in love with the yoga practice, but I was intrigued by it for sure. And for some reason I was like, maybe I'll try it again, and then maybe I'll try it again. And then in college I took a class that was yoga. It was a semester of yoga, and so I had to go twice a week to get credit. Cool. Yeah, it was just a 1 credit pass-fail class.
That's
you
cool.
go twice a week. And that teacher started to introduce like philosophy and some anatomy bits, and like more than just a hour-long movement practice, which of course feels good, but when I realized that yoga was a practice that addresses wellness of the entire system, meaning mind, body, energy, like I started to see so many threads pull together into one practice. And I think that can be really confusing for people, because people go to a yoga class, like say core power for example, and it's like lots of crunches, and like the energy is like, come get a 6-pack here. And that's really not what the heart of the yoga practice is about. And so it's gotten kind of confusing for a lot of people, how like, what are all these different pieces, and how is it all yoga? How is like the philosophy yoga, and how is the anatomy yoga, and how is like all of those different things, how do you like pull them into one story or one thread? And when I started to connect those dots and pull those pieces together, I was like, I'm so on board. And so I retook that class, even though I passed it, I retook that class every semester of college, and I just kept taking it, and that's what got me consistent practicing. And then by the end of college, I decided to teach, or probably halfway through college, I got certified to teach. And then I came back and I started teaching right away, and that was, I've been teaching for somewhere around 9 years now.
And where did you do your teacher training?
I did my first teacher training, my 200-hour, in Greece with a school of yoga called Embodied Flow, and they're amazing. They do a lot in the somatics world now, and they did a little bit then, but they've really grown more and more into the somatic space even since I've gotten certified. I did my 200-hour with them in Greece, which is like the foundational certification to become a yoga teacher, and then you can go on and do further trainings. So I did my 300-hour with them, so I got my full 500 with the School of Embodied Flow. The rest of the trainings I did with them were in Bali, so I got to travel. That kind of sparked my love for traveling at that point. And then I've done a whole bunch of other continuing education and smaller courses and other trainings. I've lost count of the amount of trainings I've done at this point.
Nice.
Yeah.
So all 500 with that same,
Yes.
the original 500 was all with that same. And how did you find them?
Through the teacher who I took her course at the university when I was in college. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Studying photography, so not studying anything related to yoga, but
But it turns out that photography degree comes in handy.
yes, that photography degree comes very much in handy. I use it pretty much every day.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice, amazing. And so when did you finish that teacher training? Like what year-ish? did you finish all of that stuff?
I am so bad at years. I want to say 20. What year is it right now? It is 2025.
Yes.
What is 2025 minus 9?
16?
That sounds exactly right.
Does that sound
August. Right? I do remember it was August.
August 16.
Yes,
Okay.
August 16.
Okay, cool. And then so
Give or take a year.
Did you teach for a studio, or how did your teaching practice sort of begin?
Yeah.
Because I know now it's very different than what it maybe used to be.
Yeah, for sure. And also the yoga industry has changed a lot. Like throughout COVID and since COVID and even just in the past like decade, the yoga industry has shifted a lot. I was practicing pretty regularly at a studio in Bozeman, where I lived at the time in Montana. And the owner of the studio knew that I was going to get certified to teach. So as soon as I came back, she didn't even give me a choice. She was like, I'm putting you on the schedule, you're starting tomorrow, basically. Nice. Was kind of the vibe. Nice. And I'm very grateful for that, because a lot of people, I mean, you don't leave a teacher training with most people don't leave teacher training feeling like, okay, I'm ready to go. Because you learn the thing and then you get good at the thing by doing the thing. And so there's a leap you still have to take after you've studied to put it into practice, to build the confidence to like be like, yeah, okay, I'm ready to show up and do this. And I still get nervous before I teach sometimes.
Really?
Or like, for sure.
Oh, that's
if
cool.
I'm in a new setting or teaching to new people, or definitely there's like certain moments where I'm like, ooh, I'm kind of like, I'm feeling a little like I need to feel my feet on the ground for a sec.
Nice.
Yeah, so I was very grateful that I got kind of launched into it in that way, very lovingly. And I started teaching so much. I was going to school and I was teaching about 20 classes a week at one point. Because
20 a week?
Yeah, because
Whoa.
For the size of Bozeman, there's a pretty substantial yoga community. There's quite a few studios. So I started teaching at one studio, and then I added on classes at various studios around town, and I really built out my schedule. I was teaching a ton for a while, and I really think that's a valuable thing for yoga teachers to do when they start, is like put the reps in. You gotta put the reps in to build the confidence and the skill to teach. Yeah.
Very cool. It's cool. I like hearing you say that, because it's I had the exact same experience graduating from the schools that I went to.
Yeah.
You know, you would think that after so much time in school and learning all these things, you would think that you would graduate like, cool, I'm like ready.
Right.
But no, you don't feel ready.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, actually, I don't really think I know anything, and you know, and you get that nervousness, but you just gotta start, and you just gotta do it, and like you said, get the reps in, because that's the only way that it's gonna really fly. So
yeah,
that's cool that that you had the same feeling in the yoga space that I had in the chiropractic space.
Yeah, there's a quote that I've really hung on to recently, specifically, that is, confidence is bravery compounded over time. It's like the bravery, the willingness to like show up and do the thing, and then like do it again and do it again and do it again and repeat that. Like, that's the process that builds the confidence. The confidence isn't the prerequisite to doing the thing. If that makes sense. Like,
perfect sense.
You don't get confident and then start. You start, and that's what helps you build the confidence.
Yes.
To keep going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So you started teaching in a studio multiple studios, one studio.
One studio at first, and then pretty quickly
and then it's
built
spread
out the schedule across studios.
And then lockdown hit.
And then lockdown hit.
And then lockdown hit.
Yeah.
And then you started using that photography degree.
Yes. Yeah.
To continue with your teaching.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I went to school for photography, and my main job really was that I was a wedding photographer. And then I was photographing weddings, and that's a pretty seasonal thing, especially in Montana. I was traveling some for weddings out of state, but for the most part it was like packed out summers of weddings. And then winters were editing, maybe smaller photo jobs, and then teaching a ton. And when COVID hit, a whole summer of weddings basically got canceled. There were some people who decided to downsize and do like micro wedding things or elope, and they kept me, but then of course they still really downsized their package. So I was kind of in panic mode of like, how is this gonna work? if everything is canceled, and we don't know how long everything's going to be canceled for. Like, the cancellations just kept rolling in one after the other, and I wanted to be really gracious with people also. I wanted to be like, of course I'll give you all your money back, but you know, that was its own thing to navigate. But I also was teaching a ton, and some of what I was teaching was private one-on-one sessions, and I had my own little studio space in my house in Bozeman. And I also had all of my photography gear. So I used my recording space, and I recorded some classes, and I put them on YouTube. And actually, I didn't know that anyone was on YouTube. I didn't know YouTube was a platform that people actually used. The reason why I uploaded these classes was because I had a mailing list of people who lived in Bozeman who were practicing with me in studio in Bozeman, and I was like, I want to be able to send them, like, people who knew me in studio, I want to be able to send them something to practice with me at home. So I was like, how can I create a link, like, to just send this and say, like, click here, practice this video with me to these people who the studios had shut down. And so that was my intention for uploading to YouTube, but I had recorded them with my nice camera gear and in my studio space. Like, the setup was perfect, and they kind of hit some sort of algorithm on YouTube and performed really well, and I reopened my page to, like, just this flood of comments, people being like, more videos, and I'm like, who are these robots talking to me? Who is this? And that was when I realized that I had kind of stumbled into something that was really cool, and I took it and ran with it and kept going.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I noticed that you do a lot of retreats also.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's super interesting. I'd love to ask you about these retreats.
Yeah.
Maybe, okay, how about let's start with this. What kind of, are the retreats for your teacher training modules? Is that exclusively what the retreats are about?
Yeah, good question.
Or
there's a couple different ways that the retreats and trainings are set up. I have yoga retreats, which I started doing first, that are anyone is welcome to join. It's typically a week, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little shorter, just depending. And it is, the really fun thing about retreats is that I've had people from all age ranges and, like, even interest levels in yoga. We've done opening circle before and I remember this one retreat, I think it was the first retreat I ever led. This man was in opening circle, and he was like, I'm gonna be so honest, I'm here because my wife is here, and, like, she loves yoga, and nice. I love her. Nice. And it was, yeah, so, I mean, it's a really fun community builder, and cool. Just opportunity to be in a cool place and have a travel experience and connect with people who are like-minded and be practicing yoga and eating good food and all of those things. So retreat settings are very casual. And then the trainings they're intensive yoga teacher training. So they're typically like 7 or 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. of training hours with, like, breaks for food, but that's about it. They're long days. And I lead 200-hour teacher training, so that's the base foundational training to become a yoga teacher. And then I've also just finished out, or I'm in the final finishing up of my 300-hour teacher training modules, which is 300 hours broken up into 6 modules, basically. And those are intensive in person. So when I'm leading a training, it is similar to a retreat in that we're staying on site in a cool place, and I'm really picky about how I pick out venues and places that we go to for all sorts of reasons. But for trainings, it's teacher training material, and for retreats, it's a couple classes a day and probably some. I always try to connect to whatever the local cuisine is and local, like, not just tourist attractions, but, like, connect to the local people and get out and do things that put us in the community in a way, which feels very important to me. But it's a lot more relaxed, the retreat setting.
Very cool.
Does that answer your question?
It totally does.
Sense?
Yeah, it totally does. It totally does. And and actually I'm kind of like rewinding in my mind. I wanted to ask you a bunch about the retreats, but actually I think I'm going to back up one step. And you are a teacher,
Yeah.
I want to get into that first
Yeah.
before I ask you any more about the
Sure.
retreats, actually. So, how did that start? How did you start teaching teachers?
The first thing that comes to mind for me when you ask that is like, I just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
That's a good answer.
I think I always dreamed of leading teacher trainings. I didn't know if that would be a reality for me or not. And I for sure still have all of the imposter syndrome things of like, oh, people want to learn from me. That's crazy. That's so cool.
Nice.
And simultaneously, like, I know that I have a lot to give, and I'm really proud of the curriculums that I've built. I've put so much just heart and so much into the curriculums. But it really does come from like one foot in front of the other. Like, first was falling in love with yoga practice, and then was falling in love with teaching, which also didn't happen right away. The first class I ever taught, I remember calling my mom afterwards and saying, like, I never want to do that again.
No way!
But I'm on the schedule tomorrow,
Yeah.
so be back in 24 hours.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yes. And then putting the reps in on teaching, I taught thousands of classes in Bozeman and then online, and then I reached a point where I just felt ready to start thinking about leading teacher trainings. I knew it was a goal for someday, and I didn't know like what that even looks like. But there was a time where I just kind of felt ready to start developing out a curriculum, and so I did the research with Yoga Alliance is kind of the alliance that decides what needs to go in a curriculum for it to be certified by Yoga Alliance as a trainer. So looked into like what I needed to do to create a program that would be approved by Yoga Alliance to then facilitate, and spent, I don't remember, at least 6 months, I want to say closer to a year, developing the first curriculums for the 200-hour, and that was writing a teacher training manual, and even just like deciding how you're going to spend 200 hours of time. That's a big amount of time.
It's a lot of hours.
Yeah, it's a lot of hours. And there are some guidelines by Yoga Alliance of like how much has to be allocated to different topics. But I kind of just chipped away at it, and then when I felt ready enough, I opened it up to people to register for and found a venue and all of those pieces as well. And was terrified but so excited, and like felt giddy but nervous and all the good things after going into the first training that I led. And now I've led 3, I'm getting ready to lead my 4th 200.
Nice.
And I've led my first 3 of 6 300-hour modules.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And did you call your mom after the first one saying that you're never going to do this ever again?
No, I'm pretty sure I called her and was like, I want to do this for the rest of my life.
Oh!
Like, that was so great.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's super cool. Okay, so tell me about the teacher trainings. What kind of, maybe like, how about this? What kind of stuff is in yours? And then, which might be a big question just by, well, it is a big question just by itself, but like maybe like an overview of like what types of topics, are covered.
Yeah.
And then next to that, what types of like guidelines are laid out by the Yoga Alliance that are like, you have to do it this way, but there's some flexibility within that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, good question. The first thing that came to my mind was something that I say all the time in my teacher trainings, is that you don't teach what you know, you teach who you are. And I think that students are drawn, and this goes across industries, students are drawn not just to the material that resonates, but to the person who's teaching it that resonates with them. And I so wholeheartedly believe that there's a teacher out there for everyone, and that no teacher is going to resonate with everybody either. And so I think like the question of what makes my material maybe like different, or what do I focus on that's different, I think there are differences across trainings, and there are like trainings will maybe give more emphasis to certain areas. Some trainings really like to focus on emphasizing philosophy, for example, or some trainings are very anatomically, like they really want to focus on anatomy and body. I have kind of, as I touched on just a the very beginning of our discussion, I have an interest in a well-roundedness and like not how do we single out the pieces, but how do we pull all the pieces together and like make a puzzle out of it that brings a picture together. So I am really interested in the philosophy and in the anatomy and in reading the text and in understanding the history of yoga. And these are all pieces that all trainings will cover to some extent, but a lot of trainings will give more emphasis to one particular area that they might be more interested in. But then, like I said, I think the layer below that is, it's not just what material are you teaching, but who are you teaching it from your heart, and are you leading in a way that the right people are drawn to you, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So some philosophy, some movement, some anatomy, some history, all that kind of stuff.
All of it, yeah.
Okay.
And I would say movement-wise, I mean, I definitely love to teach creative sequences, and that's something that I think on YouTube, all the comments right away were like, wow, I've been looking for a teacher that teaches like super creative sequencing, a little bit more advanced, quote unquote, if you can. I mean, I don't know, I don't love to like level out yoga classes, but classes that physically challenge students, arm balances, inversions, headstands, handstands, those types of things, I think are so playful and fun. And I think that in adulthood, it's really important to find ways to play, and a lot of people don't. And for some people, those things might not feel super playful, but for me, they do. And so I get really excited to teach really funky, playful sequences that kind of get people out of their comfort zone a little bit, and just that are a little bit more physically challenging.
That's beautiful. So you're teaching how to be creative.
Yeah.
That's one of the pillars of your.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's lovely and playful. I love that word.
Yeah.
Being playful, and you're totally right that as adults we kind of tend to sort of gray out a little bit, you know, like mentally and spiritually, and I don't know. That's of course it doesn't happen to everybody, but it's maybe a tendency that's right. So that's very cool. I like that.
Have you read the book The Creative Act by Rick Rubin?
By Rick Rubin, yeah. I have started it.
Okay.
And I'm got a couple chapters in, and that's where I'm at right now.
How are you at with the first couple chapters?
You
Liking
know,
it?
I like it, and I think that I like listening to him speak a little more than I'm enjoying his book.
All right.
To be totally honest.
Yeah.
I've listened to him speak for many, many hours.
Yeah.
And I'm just enthralled by what he has to say.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. I love him so much.
Yeah.
But I'm having a harder time getting into his book than I'm getting into him just kind of like speaking off the cuff.
Yeah,
I don't know what's up with that, but that's
fair.
That's how I'm at.
Well, you'll have to let me know if you see it through with the book, because I loved it so much, and I brought it into the 300-hour teacher training as like a partial required reading for some of the modules. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Well, maybe you're going to inspire me to finish it then.
Yeah, I hope so. I'll send you some of my favorite chapters.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll check that out.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about the 300? So doing the 200 is the standard entry point to becoming a teacher.
Yep.
And then the 300 in addition after that is the standard way to continue.
Yes.
Is that a
I would say that's a simple way to say yes.
Kind of like the standard sequencing.
Yeah,
okay.
That is the standard sequence. You are required to take a 200 before you take a 300. And there are a lot of people, I would say a majority of people who take 200 hours don't necessarily go on to complete their 300, which the 300 is a whole 300 new hours, so it gets them to 500 hours.
Right.
I would say that there are a lot of people who take 200-hour trainings who aren't interested in teaching, but they're interested in deepening their own practice, and it becomes like a practice intensive for them, and I'm a huge advocate for that. I think it's an amazing thing to, especially in the intensive formats where you're going to a different place and staying on site for several weeks at a time and just diving into practice for that time. I think there's so much value in that beyond any of the material. Even just like stepping out of your daily life for that amount of time, I think everyone should do as often as they can. So yeah, there are a lot of people who take 200-hour trainings who don't necessarily have an interest in teaching. And then by the time someone's taking a 300-hour, they're probably pretty dedicated in their practice and in their teaching. Yeah.
I love that so much. That is a common thing, because I have heard that I have friends actually who took a 200-hour specifically not to teach.
Yeah.
Exactly like you're saying.
Yeah.
Just because they want to learn more about the yoga world.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. I know the same exact thing happens in the mountain climbing world. I love climbing. I love all sorts of climbing, and there are trainings of how you can become a climbing guide.
Cool.
And a lot of people take those trainings just so that they can learn the stuff better without any intention to guide. So it's a fun parallel. I think that's exactly similar.
And you don't see as much of that in the chiropractic world, probably.
Like going through a chiropractic education just for like without the intention to practice kind of thing?
Yeah.
Or, no.
Yeah, it doesn't translate as much.
No, it doesn't translate in chiropractic, because the chiropractic programs are very long and very expensive.
Yeah.
You know, it's a 4-year program.
Yep.
And a lot of money.
Yeah, of course.
So, you know, of course there are some people who go through the program and then end up not practicing, but I've never heard of that being the intention from the get-go. Yeah. That's always like a thing that ends up happening after, like, maybe like a common one that I see is two people who go into the program together, and then they end up getting engaged while they're in the program, and then they graduate. The lady has a kid, and then and then the lady wants to stay at home and be a stay-at-home mom, and then the husband ends up practicing. That's a thing that happens commonly.
Interesting.
It is
interesting.
It's
a very specific scenario.
It's a very specific scenario, and I've seen it happen many, many, many times. I know many people who are in that scenario, and that's great. Yeah. You know, and I think it's also cool because then the mom or the wife understands what the husband is like up to, you know, and they end up being a lot on the same page as far as like choices on how they want to raise their children and all these kinds of things. So that's kind of the only scenario that I see that is a little bit consistent, where chiropractor ends up not practicing, but something like that.
I mean, it makes significantly more sense. A teacher training is a much smaller drop of time, and
Yes. Okay, so if someone is looking to get into a teacher training, what would you say to them for like how to pick one out? And I love how you said that it's more important the teacher is teaching who they are instead of some curriculum. I mean, of course the curriculum is there, but the curriculum is a reflection of who that teacher is if they made it themselves. So I don't know, I guess I'm wondering what could you say to people who are looking to get into it, how they want to pick their program?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's so important because there are a lot of programs out there that, that's not how I want to say that. I think it's important to find a teacher that you resonate with as they're teaching. So I think it's important that you've taken classes with the person who will be leading the training, I guess would be step number one. And if you can't take a class with them in person, see if you can take a class online, or even just consume whatever content that they're posting on their platforms, wherever they're posting, however you found them. Like, make sure that you resonate with them as a person, because I think that there are a lot of wonderful trainings out there, but if it's not someone that you really resonate or connect with, it's not gonna feel like it totally clicks. And I think that word of mouth is awesome. I found my first trainings because I asked around teachers who I enjoyed practicing with them, who weren't leading trainings, like, where did you train? What trainings are out there that you'd recommend right now? And so asking people who you trust in their opinions, I think is super valuable place to start. I wouldn't start with like a simple Google search, which seems like the immediate place to go, of just 200-hour yoga teacher training near me. And maybe that is a place you start, but don't stop there. Like make sure that you resonate with the teacher, make sure that you see a bit about who and what they're about before you commit to any sort of training container with them. Also, something to consider, trainings are set up in a few kind of various ways. The way that I lead my trainings is it's for 200 hours, it's 10 days in person, and then there's a short online component as well. So it's considered a hybrid training. Even though the majority of the focus is on the in-person intensive, there is a short online piece also. Some trainings are either fully in person in an intensive format, so a couple weeks in person. Some are fully online, which is mostly since COVID that's even been possible. I'm not a huge fan of fully online trainings.
That sounds crazy to me.
Yeah. I understand that financially they tend to be more affordable because you're not paying for food and accommodations and travel and all those things, and you can do them on your own schedule. So I understand why they are the only option for some people. But I think the quality, not even just the quality of material, because there can be really great material taught online, but the hands-on piece of it is just missing. And I don't think that there's just no way to duplicate that in an online setting. So yeah, I'm pretty strongly opinionated on like do some of the hours in person, even if you can't do all of the hours in person. And then there are trainings also that might happen at a local studio, and they'll be spread out over something like 9 months. You'll come like, I don't know, every Saturday and every other Wednesday night, or like the schedule will be broken out into its 200 hours in some sort of other way. And those are nice if you are looking for something that's local to you, it's in person, but you can't get the time off of work or maybe away from home to be in an intensive format. But I'm a big fan of the intensives because I think that you get to just be there. You get to check out of daily life. You get to leave everything else at home and just be in the practice, be in the setting, be in the introspection, be in the self-study piece of the practice, and be in community with other people that are doing the same thing. And I find so much value in that. So definitely something to take into consideration for someone who's looking for a training.
Yes, and that's whether you are wanting to teach or whether you're just doing it for your own personal practice.
Yes.
I think it all still applies, everything that you just said.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I totally agree with you. There's really something irreplaceable about in person.
Yeah.
And that's even why I like doing this podcast in person. Like, that's fine, like online, like it's good, like, you're talking to but I don't know.
Yeah.
This is different. It's unique. And so but that it's way more the case for something like a movement practice or a manual therapy training or something like that. Like there's no there's no way around it. That's really the gold standard.
Yeah.
So, but the hybrid is cool. So, like, what kind of stuff is in your online portion?
Yeah. So I think it has been cool as a teacher to be able to be really intentional about what goes online and what goes in person, and how do I allocate those hours. And I have found that there's some information that's super valuable to be taught in an online format, because it's information that I assume people are going to want to return to and visit more than once, like lecture material specifically. So for example, if there's a lecture on, I don't know, say an anatomy lecture, that's not information that someone hears once and then they're like, yep, got it forever. And especially, the other thing I say with 200-hour trainings is, okay, you teach, you absorb the information, and then you go out and teach. And there's a different level of processing that happens after you put the information to use, because when you're learning it before you teach, it's all hypothetical, right? Like, it's like when you teach, for example, if I'm giving tips on like how to give good verbal cues, or how to give how to create sequences for different demographics or different skill levels, that kind of thing. Like, it's all like, when you encounter this situation, do this. But then people have to go out and do it. They have to go teach and put the skill to use before they then process it on a deeper level. And then I've found that when you get to that point that you're like, okay, this isn't hypothetical anymore. This isn't the stuff I wrote down in my textbook. It's what I'm actually doing. Then people have a whole new round of questions and a whole new round of like wanting to receive the information, and maybe even need to hear the same exact thing a second time from the other side of like, okay, now they haven't just thought about it, they've actually done it. So the stuff that goes in the online portal is stuff that I imagine is going to be really helpful for people to return to and watch again once they've started teaching. And I don't require them to do that because they've already gotten their certification, but I found
have that option.
Yeah, they have an option. So whether it's like anatomy recordings or history, philosophy, things where people are gonna, you don't just hear it once and then have it ingrained in your memory forever. Like you're gonna want to go back and kind of double check or freshen up. That's the stuff that goes online.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool.
Yeah. And anything where someone might want to take notes and like pause and write and then play and then pause and write and play.
Yeah. History, philosophy, and anatomy, those sound like great ones to put on the online portion. And then maybe like, and then movement practices in person. Like,
Movement, hands-on adjustment, so giving people physical touch. Like I have some videos where I'm showing myself giving a hands-on adjustment, and that's something that people might go back to like remind themselves after a training is done, but you don't learn how to do that by watching the video, you learn how to do that by practicing it and doing it.
Cool. Cool. Okay, so this might be an impossible question in a way, but we'll do our best. What are maybe like either top one or top few, like most mission critical things that you want your teachers to finish your program really having good?
I want them to leave training feeling significantly more connected to themselves and their own practice. And that is like, again, you don't teach who you know. You teach you oh no. You don't teach what you know, you teach who you are. And I'm such a believer that it all starts here, and it all starts in doing our own inner work and then trusting that when you show up in the world as you, that you embody the things that you want to teach. And of course, like of course it sounds poetic, and there's more to it than just like going inward. You then have to put things into practice as well. But I think so much of it starts with deepening your own practice, deepening your own connection to yourself, deepening your own svadhyaya is a Sanskrit word for self-study, which is a big part of the yoga practice and the more philosophical side of the practice. And also when you do that inner work for yourself, there's a clarity that comes where there's no question in how you want to show up, because you just show up as you. I don't even remember what your original question was now.
That was such a good, the question was, what is the, what are like most important things that you want to take away? And I don't know what, I mean, I'm not expecting anything, but that's such a beautiful answer that I wasn't expecting at all. And I'm reminded of Rick Rubin. That sounds like something Rick Rubin would say, actually. It's like he likes to say the audience comes last, right? And that's kind of like what you said. It's like most important thing is who you are and what you got in here. And then you can go and then you can spread that. That's such a great answer. I love that so much.
Yeah, you can trust that if you've done your own inner work, that anything that comes from you will be authentic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Okay, any other mission critical things that you like want your people to really leave with? That might even be a good place to stop just there, because I love that answer so much. But maybe something else comes to mind. Yeah,
I mean, there's so many things. There's the more like, similar to my first answer of just like doing your own work, trusting your own process, that really is the biggest thing. And then of course there are the more tangible like teacher skills that feel significantly less important in a way of like how to sequence well and how to cue well and how to, I mean, those things, like, I teach them, and I teach them in a way that I'm really passionate about, but underneath all of it is always like, how do you come home to yourself? Because that is the practice. Like the yoga practice thousands of years ago, as it originated, no one was doing handstands, no one was doing any of the physical postures that are done now. And I think remembering like the thread of something I say all the time is what the yoga practice wants for you is your freedom, for you to feel more free, whatever that means for you. Free in your body, free in your mind, free in your body to move well, free in your mind to be less stuck and stuck in like thought patterns that aren't serving you, free in an energetic way, however that resonates. But what the yoga practice wants for you is to feel more free. And so whatever you're doing in your practice, whatever you're teaching, like let it come from that place, and the cueing will come, and the sequencing will come, and the anatomy will come, and the like those things will come with practice and continuing to study over time, because you're not meant to walk away from a 200-hour teacher training with all of the knowledge. Like I'm thousands and thousands of hours into practicing, into teaching teachers, and I still feel like I'm on page 1 of whatever book this is. Like all the time I'm like, wow, I know nothing. I mean, I know a lot, and I know like there's so much out there, and there's no way that I will reach the end of my life having like checked all the boxes that I wish I could check, or knowing all the things that I want to know. But I can keep coming back to myself and staying connected to my own heart, and let that be the motivator of my practice, and then teach from that place, and that will connect with the people who want to practice with me.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. I have a very, very basic question.
Great.
When you say sequencing and cueing, I know what you mean by sequencing.
Yeah.
But I actually don't know what you mean by cueing.
Oh, okay, great.
What's cueing?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Thank you for asking.
Thank you for teaching me such a simple thing.
Yeah, no. Great. Cueing is any way that you signal a student to do a thing. That's a like textbook answer to that question.
Okay.
Examples of cueing. Verbal cues are any words that I would use to say, like, come into downward dog, lift your right leg, step your foot between your hands. Those are all verbal cues.
Got it.
And we go through all sorts of exercises about how to give verbal cues, because as simple as it sounds, it can be really hard to tell someone what to do with their body, especially when people have all sorts of varying mind-body connection. Like for example, you wouldn't go into a class setting of a yoga studio and say, like, externally rotate your right femur, and like I could say that to you and you would know what that means, but I'm not going to say that to like a noon power hour on a Tuesday, because maybe a couple people would know, but and also it very much depends on the setting. So that's verbal cueing. There's hands-on assist is technically a cueing. It's physical cueing. Okay. So giving people hands-on adjustments. And then also demonstration is like a visual cue. So if I was at the front of the room practicing while people are doing the class so they can see me, that's a visual cue. Or am I walking around the room and giving hands-on adjustments and those types of things.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. It was not a basic question.
Okay.
Yeah, that was good.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so maybe let's get back to the retreats, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because I just think that's such a cool thing.
Yeah.
Retreats
are such a cool thing.
It's just a cool thing. Like, I kind of want to just go to one with you just because. It just sounds like, it looks like a great time.
I would love to have you.
What kind of stuff, if one is to do one of those outside of a teacher training, what could one expect?
Yeah. Well, I'm getting ready to leave to Panama in about a week to lead a retreat, and I've led at this resort several times now. It's called Sansara. It's beautiful. It's in a little coastal town called Kombutal. And Sansara is so well dialed at facilitating retreat groups that as the facilitator, I feel like I do very little when it comes to Sansara, as far as like the planning and organizing and all of that. So what that week will look like, and I'm setting this up with Sansara because I'll compare it to other retreats that I've done where I've had to do a lot more planning and things like that, because there's a lot of different ways to lead retreats. But with Sansara, they're so dialed in at leading retreat groups that as the leader, I create my schedule, which means I'm going to teach a couple classes a day. And I have 2 co-facilitators coming with me for this retreat that is new. Usually I lead them by myself, and I'll typically have an assistant or I have a little team that comes with me as I lead retreats, and you've met Silvana, and she's incredible.
Shout out to Silvana.
Shout out to Silvana.
Yeah.
Silvana's going to be co-leading this retreat with me because something I haven't mentioned yet, but I created my own online platform called The Kula, which is an online yoga studio, and I upload classes every week. And so this is going to be a Kula team retreat. So all the teachers that teach inside of The Kula are going to be teaching on this retreat. So it'll be me, Silvana, and Toby. And so we'll lead a couple of different yoga classes a day, and then there's lots of free time in the schedule for people to go to the beach, go surfing. There's a surf school on site at Sansara, so anyone who wants to surf can surf. There are stand-up paddle boards, and it's just hang out, chill at the resort. And then this resort specifically offers their own excursions with local guides for anyone who wants to go hiking, or what other things do they have set up for us this year? There's hiking. There's a really fun tide pool adventure where they drive us along the beach to this secret spot that they know with tide pools, and we cliff jump into the tide pools, and they make it a fun experience. And that's all just very much organized by them. I've also led retreats where I've found the venue and then really had to do all of my own research to find a chef, find hiking guides, find whatever excursions I want to include in the retreat schedule. I'm kind of doing the research and finding them and booking and hiring them myself. But I typically always include some sort of local outdoor activity, whether it's hiking or surfing, or what else have we done?
Connecting with the community, with the local community, like you said before, right?
And with nature. Yeah. Yes,
Panama has some beautiful nature.
So beautiful.
OMG, the forest and the mountains and the ocean and the beach, and Panama is beautiful.
Yeah, so beautiful.
Yeah,
you've been.
I have been. I've been one time. Yeah.
Any favorite memories from Panama?
Favorite memories from Panama? This little brain coral right here.
I was just looking at.
I got that from. I found that on the beach in Panama, and probably. So there is an island chain. I believe it's on the Atlantic side, but this island chain is called San Blas. The San Blas.
You've been to the San Blas Islands. Oh, they're so beautiful.
The San Blas Islands is exactly where I found that brain coral.
I brought a shell back from the San Blas Islands also.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's like a dream. I can't believe it's even real.
Yeah.
It's one of the coolest places I've ever been. Yeah, we took
I agree.
It was just my mom and me, and we did a little mother-son sort of excursion, and we went out, and a little boat takes you out, and it takes an hour to.
Scariest boat ever. If it's the same boat that I've been on.
It wasn't bad. No, it wasn't bad. It was pretty chill.
It was a little boat. Did it take you? Finish your story. I'm sorry.
Not sure. No, I mean it was like a medium-sized boat. There was maybe
Not the same boat.
No, probably not. No, there could maybe fit 15 people on this boat.
Okay.
Plus the driver and the driver assistant kind of thing.
Okay.
And but it's kind of thing for sure.
Yeah.
But no, we got out there, and and then there's a little cabin sort of set up, and it on stilts out on the water, and you like are sleeping out on the water, and it's just it's a beautiful place.
So you were sleeping in a cabin on the water? That's right. Oh, cool.
Yeah, there's the place that there's a lot of different options, you know, and you can like island hop, and they have a bunch of different ways that it's all set up.
Yeah.
But the little tiny island that my mom and I were at, it was the island you could walk the entire perimeter of the whole entire island in like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It was just this teeny tiny little nothing, you know. Oh man, it's just so cool. And then serving fresh food, and you know, you're just hanging out, and I just like stared at the ocean for like 6 hours a day, just like you know, Mother Nature kind of like soothing the soul, and you know, I like stick my feet in the water, and the water kind of like moves my leg around, and it's just very nice. Yeah. And then in part of that package that we bought, which was very, very affordable, surprisingly crazy affordable, we got to hop through like 3 or 4 different islands, you know, and we slept there two nights. Yeah, it was 2 nights, 3 days, and they take us to a couple of places, and it was awesome.
Okay, so I brought a retreat group to the Sandblast Islands.
Oh!
Because I led a retreat at Sansara in same place I'm going back to. It's in Kambutal. And then for a couple of the retreats I've done add-ons, because what I noticed was that a lot of people were coming to this week-long retreat, and I always start a group chat before the retreat on WhatsApp so that everyone can just be in one place for travel logistics and whatever. And every retreat, people were putting in the chat, like, is anyone staying longer? Let's coordinate some travel plans for after the retreat. And I was like, oh, well, I can help with that. And so a couple of different times, I've done about 3 days of like an add-on travel experience that's non-yoga related, don't even necessarily have yoga practices. It's just another way to continue the group setting into something else. So for the last Panama retreat that I led, I took, I believe it was 10 of us, including me, to 3 days in the Sandblast Islands, and we were all on a boat together for 3 days on one of the catamarans. And
you lived on the boat?
Lived on the boat for 3 days.
Oh, yeah. All right. Yeah. That's cool.
And we had the captain was driving us, and then he had his partner, who was a chef, doing the meals for us. And we did 3 days in the Sandblast, and it was just unreal.
It's unreal. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a crazy place. Yeah. Oh my God, I have to tell you this because this is just so funny. Yeah. The little cabins that we stayed in were not posh. They were not nice.
Nothing out there is. Yeah.
It's just very simple, and I'll never forget. It's burned into my memory. It's just the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. The shower was a PVC pipe coming out of the wall, and then with an elbow turn down, and it was just an open PVC pipe. Yep. That was the shower.
That checks out.
Just so funny. My mom and I just laughed and laughed and laughed. It was just a great time.
Yeah. That's so great.
It was awesome.
Those are some of my favorite moments when I'm traveling, of being like, oh, I would never have an experience. Like, it's the little things of like, the shower, or just being put in experiences that are not like home.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so after that, we ended up meeting up with more family. You know, Mom and I arrived early. We hung out for a couple days and did the Sunblast tour. You know, and then more of my family from Mexico showed up, and then we did like a bigger family hangout thing. So that was my Panama experience. It was a good time.
That's so great. Yeah, I love that.
Time. Traveling is wonderful.
Yeah.
And wonderful for so many different reasons, right? This is a little bit of a tangent, but I don't know. I'm a little bit passionate about it, and I know that, exactly. I know that you're passionate about travel too. It's so easy to get a tunnel vision on life, you know, and just like be in a bubble wherever it is that you are, and just travel is the best way to just explode that tunnel vision and explode that bubble, because you see how big the world is and how different everything is. And you know, if you are ever feeling bogged down by your little bubble of whatever it is, that just go get a passport and just go somewhere, and you can realize like, okay, this world is a big place, and people live in a lot of different ways, and
Yeah.
it's okay, and we can sort of, I don't know, soften up our something, soften up our spirit.
Yeah.
You know?
I could not agree more. And even just soften the word that came to my mind is soften the grip of how we think we need to live our lives every single, we're such creatures of habit, and it's so easy to get into this is my routine, this is how I live my life, this is what I do with my days. And then the other word this is even more on the tangent, but the word that came to mind was algorithm. When we're on our phones and consuming anything we consume, we consume things that confirm our biases, and we consume things that are going to keep feeding us the things we want to see, and the things that we just, I don't know, it's just more and more of the same all the time.
Yes.
And to be thrown out of the nest into something totally different, and to put yourself into situations where something's going to go wrong. That's just the nature of travel. Something's going to get canceled, or you're going to have a delay, or you're going to end up I don't know, in a different place than you thought you were going to end up on. And those experiences just expand our ability to see the world and see other people.
Yes.
I think it's so important.
Totally, million% yes.
Yeah.
1,000,000% yes.
Yeah.
1,000,000% yes. Okay, so let's get back to the yoga stuff. So
wait, would you ever host a retreat? Do you think you want to host one someday?
Host a retreat? What would that mean, to host a retreat?
I don't know. What would that mean?
I don't know.
You would get to decide what that means.
I don't know what I would even do. I'm not I don't know. What would I do? I'm not sure.
Have you ever thought about it?
No, I've never thought about it. I guess in a way I do host retreats, but in the anatomy lab.
Yeah.
That's kind of the retreats that I host.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an exploration. It's definitely a journey. But it's, and it's an external journey because you're going through this experience through something, it's not like you close your eyes and it's an internal journey, but what you see on the table in a very strong way is like a mirror into yourself. Yeah. And so...
Absolutely. Especially in the lab. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So in a way, I don't know. I've never thought of doing it any other way, because that's kind of, that's what I do. I'm a body worker and I'm an anatomy educator. And so...
You're so good with people.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I try.
Yes.
It's, and it's crazy to hear you say that, because I grew up such an introvert, actually. If I think about it, I actually can't even believe I'm doing this right now, because I grew up such an introvert, you know?
Yeah.
And I had such a history with communication being a problem, actually, and me struggling with communication and feeling not heard and feeling very agitated over not being heard. It's maybe something that I still struggle with, actually. That's something that's still a challenge. It's just but it's gotten so much better, and teaching is the thing that has helped me progress more than anything else in my whole life.
Wow, that's
just
incredible.
Getting in front of a group of people and sharing about the things that I have collected in my brain, and sharing with people, being open about going through a process myself, and just being able to share with people what my process is. Those two things, there's nothing that's even close that has helped me more with my sort of speaking stuff.
Well, it's very clear that you're in flow when you're in those spaces. It's beautiful to witness.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Of
I appreciate
course.
that. That means a lot.
Yeah, no, it's so true.
That means a lot. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So I want to ask more about yoga stuff. I want to ask so you mentioned towards the beginning, if you go to a power yoga, core power or whatever, I don't know if that's a specific name, but I don't want to drop names, but
sure.
What I mean to say is, you go to some classes and you're going to get a workout. And then you go to other classes and you might not do that much asana work. It's more subtle and more internal process. So there's a big wide range of what a yoga practice is
Yes.
like, you know, more philosophically, huge range.
Also breathwork and meditation. I haven't mentioned that yet, but very much a part of what I'm interested in facilitating.
Yeah,
and
nice.
Experiencing as a student.
Nice, yeah. So huge range. And this is something that I encounter with chiropractic too, actually. There's a huge range of what chiropractic is.
Yeah.
And I often run into people who say like, oh, I got adjusted one time, I know what chiropractic is all about. Or I went to a yoga class one time and I know what a yoga is all about. And it's like, I'm sorry, but actually, no. You know, actually the world is so vast and varied and huge. And so I kind of don't even know what my question is, but maybe can you speak to the variation in the yoga world and like maybe the benefits of that variation and then maybe the kind of the issues that come out of that variation. I don't know. Something like that.
That's great. I think it's a great thought. And I think one thing that came to mind is a conversation we've had before about just variety of maps. And it's not that there's a right or a wrong way to practice or a good or a bad class to take. Like, that's not the rhetoric. It's why do you want to practice and what are you looking to find and how are, like, what is, not that you need to have a goal going into a yoga class, but like, what is it that you are interested in, and then how do you find a practice or a teacher or a style that is going to lead you in that direction? Because if your goal is handstand, probably don't go to the breathwork meditation class. If your goal is more introspection, you know, like, there are going to be different teachers that set that up in different ways and different teachers that are just going to resonate differently with you as a student. So I think understanding that, and a lot of times people who show up to say their first yoga class, they have no idea the range that's available. They just want to try out this thing called yoga. And so that can definitely be a challenge for someone who's interested in trying yoga but like doesn't even know where to start. Like that can be an intimidating factor, and maybe that's, you asked like what are kind of some of the issues of that. Like, I think lack of consistency across the board for like what is a yoga class might make it confusing for people. But at the same time, I think it gives teachers so much freedom to be able to explore the parts of the practice that are interesting to them and then to teach those parts. And also, something that I think about a lot, especially like as I progressed in my teaching career, is that anytime you're practicing with a teacher, you're practicing with them at some snapshot in their teaching journey. And teachers evolve, teachers iterate. And so I might teach something today that in a few years, a decade from now, I'll look back on and be like, oh, I would teach that so differently now. I hope that's the case because I want to grow as a facilitator. And that's also true now. I look back on some of the things I've taught years and years past, and it's funny now that things are like more permanent on the internet since I'm teaching online. I can look back at old classes and be like, oh, I would teach that differently now. But teachers get to lead by example in that way and be like, okay, I'm going to be iterative too. I'm going to try out new things too. I'm going to teach something different that may or may not land, may or may not stick. I might teach it differently tomorrow. But I've now totally gone off the topic of your original question. But
I don't think so. That's okay. You keep going.
Yeah, but I think that teachers are also in process of understanding and learning and growing within their own practice and then teaching from that place. And so what is present for me in my practice, and therefore what I'm really excited about teaching right now, is also always evolving. And so I'm trying to bring this back to how you posed your original question. But I think as a student, having some sort of understanding of like what you want to get out of a yoga class will be a really good starting point for you finding a teacher that is going to help you work towards those goals or those interests, and then let it evolve, because it will evolve if you stick with it, because anything with longevity evolves. So yeah, there's meditation, there's breath work, there's introspection, there's philosophy, there's even just within the movement, like if you just isolate like, okay, yoga is a movement practice, there are teachers who really focus on mobility. There are teachers who care a lot more about flexibility or strength or just teaching a really creative sequence, or there are different styles like vinyasa or yin, or I mean I could keep going, but I think getting clear about what your intentions are in going to a class and then finding the teachers that resonate with you are important.
Yes.
And as you said, not giving up after one class that you didn't like keep exploring.
So maybe what are some, you mentioned a couple categories, but maybe can we just linger on it just a little bit? Maybe for someone who doesn't even know what, like, okay, what is my intention? But I don't even know what my intention is because I don't know what my options are. So could we linger on that for a second? Like what are, you mentioned meditation and breath work, and I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because even within those worlds, there's different styles of meditation. There's different styles of breath work. I would say some of the most common things you'll see on a yoga schedule are the word vinyasa, which
what does that mean?
Yes. And again, like within vinyasa, there could be a wide range in like, I'll say like intensity levels of a class. But vinyasa is flow-based. So if you go to a vinyasa class, you can expect to be moving for the majority of the class. Usually an hour, sometimes a little less or more.
Non-stop movement.
Ish. Yeah, like you'll still probably start in a child's pose or a seat, and maybe have a grounding moment, something like that. But you can expect to be moving pretty consistently for the time. And different teachers will teach at different paces. You might work up a sweat, you might be moving a lot, you might be moving slower, and it could be a little bit more gentle, but you can expect to be moving. And a vinyasa is when you go from down dog to plank to chaturanga, you pull through to an up dog and then back to down dog. Or you can modify by going down to belly and doing a cobra. That sequence is vinyasa. So any class that includes that sequence between flows, do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about.
Okay, when you do that sequence between a flow, it's a vinyasa class.
Okay.
To put very simply.
Cool. And then you can have variations and customizations around that, but that's sort of like you will expect to encounter that sequence in a vinyasa class.
Yeah, between sides and between flows. Yes, and then in a hatha class, you can expect to be holding poses for a lot longer. You likely won't do any vinyasas throughout the class, typically slower paced, but definitely still very postural, like you're still going to be moving throughout the hour or throughout the class. If you see yin on the schedule, yin and restorative are two types of practice that seem very similar to each other, and they get thrown around like interchangeably a decent amount, but there is differentiation between yin and restorative. Yin is deep stretch. It is not necessarily like restful. Sometimes it is basically in a yin pose, you'll be holding postures for something like 7 minutes at a time. It's longer holds.
It's a long time.
7 minutes doesn't sound that long, and then you're in it, and it's a long time.
It's a long 7 minutes.
And it's a long 7 minutes if you're in like a really deep lunge and your hips are like, yeah. But supported with props. So the idea with yin is that you want gravity to do the work.
Got it.
So you're not actively engaged. You're going to set up in a posture, you're going to support yourself with props, you're going to be there for time. And restorative is similar. You hold poses for longer, you are supported with props, but the idea or kind of interest in the class is a lot more restful, is a lot more calming the nervous system, is a lot more restful. So the poses are probably going to be more gentle and less intensity, like stretch wise. Whereas a yin class can be pretty intense if you're in a deep stretch and feeling a lot of sensation for 7 minutes at a time. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I'd say those are some popular ones. Also, there are classes like Ashtanga is its own very, very like specific set sequence. And there's really I would say, rigorous training to become an Ashtanga teacher. Like, I myself have not done Ashtanga training, so I would not be certified to teach an Ashtanga class. It's a specific sequence, and the teacher supervises their students in a very specific way. And so there are various schools of yoga that are like that.
Bikram is another example.
Bikram is another example of that sequence.
That sequence is the same sequence in any Bikram studio you go to.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool. So Ashtanga is like that as well.
Yeah.
And I have heard about Yoga Nidra a lot.
Yeah.
This is like another niche sort of, but it's still under the yoga umbrella.
Yep.
Maybe tell us a little bit about Yoga Nidra.
Yeah, I am interested in learning more about Yoga Nidra. I've done a couple of practices. I would say it is, I don't think that it's considered a meditation, although I could be wrong about that.
I might call it a meditation.
Yeah.
I guess it depends what you mean by meditation,
Yeah,
though, right?
Yeah, for sure. Maybe it would be considered a form of meditation. I don't know enough about the like foundation of Yoga Nidra to say like that when it was being developed that its intention was meditation or not. I'm not sure, but I could see that, yes. But my understanding of Nidra is that you are kind of in mostly reclined, right? Have you done Nidra?
I've just heard a bunch about it. I've heard very good things.
Yep.
It helps people sleep. That's the thing that I keep hearing over and over and over.
Yep.
It helps me sleep. Or if I wake up in the middle of the night, I do some Nidra and it helps me fall back asleep.
Yeah.
You know, that's the most common thing I hear.
Yeah. I think that mostly you are reclined in the pose which we call Shavasana. It means corpse pose. And the whole practice is done just in a reclined position. Yeah, and I guess, I mean, maybe it would be more along the lines of meditation. I could see that, it being considered that.
Yeah. Again, it depends what you mean by meditation.
Yeah.
You know, what we use that word. What do we mean by that word?
Right.
You know, so.
Yeah.
So that's super cool. So you have a range from vinyasa all the way to nidra, and then a lot of different things in between, and it's all yoga. So like, what the heck, you know? And I'm so reminded of chiropractic. It's the same way.
Yeah.
You know, you have like high velocity, big moves, you know, and then you have on one end of the spectrum, you know, deep work that's like intense, and you know, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you have chiropractors who will refuse to do any high velocity moves whatsoever, and it's all very superficial, almost you could call it energy work, and they call it chiropractic, and they call it the same thing,
right?
And then there's so much in between all of that. And, you know, just like the yoga world, it's like, I love it because everyone is different and everyone is looking for different things, and everyone's body is different and everyone's body responds in different ways to different, you know, approaches. And so how beautiful that we can have, you know, a range of possibility for all of this things that people are looking for and that people are responding well to. But then also you never know what you're going to get. So what the heck, you know? And so it's a little bit of it's like good and frustrating simultaneously. So, but whatever, that is what it is. And
I have like 3 things that have just come to my mind as you've said that. I hope I can remember them all. One, the image that I think you'll appreciate this. I've thought about this a lot. The image that comes to mind for me is the image of a tree. And for me, I'll talk about this with yoga. For you, it resonates with chiropractic. But there is the like trunk, the root of like what is the yoga practice and what has been true of the yoga practice since it was created thousands and thousands of years ago now. And then everyone who's touched it along the way has like made their own little branch off of the trunk of the tree, and like the further and further it goes out, the more it's going to differentiate, but like it can always be traced back to the root and to the trunk and to the center. And on that note, like as teachers, practitioners, facilitators, however we call ourselves, it is important to keep some sort of connection to the root of like, am I doing justice to teaching or facilitating this thing that I'm labeling as yoga, and what does that mean, and what does that mean to me, and how do I teach that in a way that I'm proud of, that is connected to like the root of the system. And what a gift that we get to like touch it and make it ours. Because the other thing that I know is that none of us are teaching just one thing. We're all informed by every stimulus we've met in our lives. So like, yes, I'm teaching yoga, but I also have this like long background in therapy from a young age, and that influences who I am and how I teach. And I've had like really big relationships in my life that have totally changed the way I see the world, and that has made its way into how I teach. I've read books I'm reading a business book right now that's like inspiring the way that I'm teaching yoga. Like every input that we take into our systems influences our work and how we facilitate and how we practice and how we do our work. So of course that's going to be individual to you. That's a good thing that it's individual to you. And there's a responsibility of like, okay, how do I stay connected to the root of the practice and like what it's meant to be from its roots, if that makes sense.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's beautiful and it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Okay, what was the other thing I was going to say?
You had 2 more?
I think that was 2 in 1.
That was 2 in 1. All right, cool.
The tree image and dang it. Yeah, it's gone.
That's okay.
Know. I'll let you know if it comes back.
Cool. You let me know. Okay, how about this question? What is your most favorite thing about the yoga world? And what's your least favorite thing about the yoga world?
That's a very big question. Very, very... Most favorite thing about the yoga world is that, to me, yoga is such a introspective practice, in that I think yoga is so much about studying humanness and like embracing everything that it means to be human, truly everything that it means to be human, like physical, emotional, energetic, all of it is humanness, and therefore all of it applies to my practice. And therefore everything that I do all day long, all the time, I'm like, this is a part of my practice. Like I love that about yoga. And maybe, I don't know if that addresses your question directly, but it was kind of the first thing that came to mind of like, I get to live my practice all day, every day. And I'm obsessed with that. Like I really enjoy walking through my life and being like, how can I experience my life as fully as possible, as freely as possible, as big as possible, and like have a really thorough experience of being human. I'm really interested in like all of the textures of humanness and like what it means to live in a body and what it means to be in relationship with other people in the world, and like all of it, to me, I get to be like, yeah, it's all yoga to me. And nice. I don't know if that would resonate to everyone who practices yoga, but yeah, I would say that's a favorite thing, is that everything gets to apply to my practice. Least favorite thing. I think I had to really overcome in my early years of practicing, and definitely early years of teaching, that not everyone is there for the same reasons, or that not everyone is there with good intentions in the practice. And the thing that I've really just like come to terms with time and time again is that any industry, any practice, anything that we do is going to have people who are there for the wrong reasons, and people who may not even know that they're not there for the right reasons, but they're lost or misguided, or that was a big one for me to have to like work through. And
you're totally right that is a universal in every profession, in every world, in every sort of sector of society, in every sector of this whole world. That is the case for sure. So yeah, I remember being like, but yoga is the place that you go to, like, everyone's a good person, everyone's gonna love each other here, everyone's gonna like, Not so much.
No.
Yeah, not so
There's
much.
a lot of not that too.
There's a lot of not that.
Yeah.
But the pockets of good people and the pockets of good intentions and pure and, I'm here to serve, I'm here to help, I want you to become better. And that is enough, I think, to overcome what is not that.
Yeah, totally agree.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
In both the yoga space and in all of the other spaces, I think that's the case.
Yeah. I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I'll ask you one final question.
Okay.
Another two-part question.
Okay.
I like two-part questions for some reason.
That's great.
What if you could? This might also be a huge, ridiculous question, but that's okay. I'm gonna ask it anyway.
I love huge, ridiculous questions. I just tend to end up talking about something like 10 subjects later.
That's great. That's great.
Because I'm a Gemini and I think I have ADHD. So.
It's a good combo.
Yeah.
A good combo.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So if you, for someone who's looking to get into yoga, what advice? What's one bit of advice that comes to mind? And someone who has practiced a lot of yoga, what piece of advice comes to mind for them?
Yeah. I would say for the person who's interested in getting into yoga, it seems like kind of a lame answer, but like at some point you just have to do it. You just have to start. I think there's I hear of a lot of people who say, I want to try yoga, but I'm intimidated. I can understand that it's intimidating showing up to a class because the teacher is going to say, like, go into triangle pose, and you're going to be like, what is triangle pose? I don't know that pose. And there's a certain amount of, you kind of just have to show up and be willing to not know, but to make your way through for a little while. And now there's so many resources online as well. There's so many classes on YouTube that are totally free. And very easy to access that can be maybe a lower barrier to entry if that's something that is more accessible for someone who's interested in starting. And I would say whether it's an online class or an in-person studio situation, find a teacher that is teaching something, not that it has to be labeled like beginner friendly, but there are also classes on the schedule that are meant to be more advanced or meant to be a little bit more challenging or to push students a little bit further. And I would say find a class that's going to be a little more nurturing to either all levels or beginners if you're worried about being thrown into something that's going to be intimidating from the start.
So maybe Vinyasa, Ashtanga, maybe not so much. Maybe so. What key words could people look for that they could be sure that this will be
that's a good question.
Friendly for someone who's just starting? Yeah,
that's a great question. I would say less even about the title of the class, unless the class were like level 5 Vinyasa, that would probably be a little bit more challenging. Yeah. But maybe read the descriptions of the classes, because sometimes studios will name classes all sorts of things. You could see a class that's called like slow power, or like, I don't know, sometimes teachers name their own classes, and there's really no way to know by the title of the class unless it specifically says like intro series or beginner class, that type of thing. But you can also reach out to the studio like through the website and say like, hey, I'm new, what classes would you direct me towards? And they might even point you directly to a teacher that they think is really good at nurturing your students.
Nice. Nice. Call them up, they're going to be friendly.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's a great, I love that advice.
Yes.
I would have never thought of it. It's so simple. I would have never thought of that. Just call them up and ask.
Call them up and ask like what teachers would be best for or a class time that would be best for nurturing a newer student. Also, in general, studios tend to be busier in the evening hours as well as oftentimes the weekends. Depends on the studio a little bit, but if you can go to like a 9:30 a.m. class on a weekday, obviously that's not everyone's schedule, but if you can find a time that is maybe not like the busiest class on the schedule, you might have for one, more space in the room, but also more opportunity to connect with the teacher.
More individualized attention.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's cool advice too.
Yeah. And then for someone who is like, how did you word it?
Someone who's done a lot of yoga practice.
Someone who's practiced a lot of yoga. I would say keep exploring like the different pockets of the practice that seem interesting. For example, when I first started practicing, I was right away really interested in arm balances and inversions and all those like fun, very physical things. And like, I wanted to leave class with dripping sweat. That was a fun practice for me. I really enjoyed that, and I still do. But as you spend more and more time in the practice, I think it's really valuable to incorporate and be willing to explore different areas like meditation, like breath work, like going to a yin class. Like how can you make your practice more well-rounded if you've been doing the same thing for a long time? Yeah, I would say that would be what I would say.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Nicole! Thank you so much for chatting with me.
Thank you.
This is super fun.
Thank you for having me.
Super
fun.
Super fun. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I look forward to learning more. And maybe another time we can do this again and maybe talk a little more about our anatomy stuff, because
Please, I would love that.
We're doing a lot of anatomy stuff,
Yeah,
and
we
this is. I feel like we're just scratching the surface of
Yes.
this topic, honestly.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that we
So
could
much.
talk about, and so many different places that we could go with this, but
Part two.
we'll do a part 2 at some point, and this is a first good pass. And so anyway,
Thank you for having me.
thank you so much. All right, bye everybody.
Bye.